Right, England could finish their World Cup campaign on a high when they take on France tonight in a third-place playoff in Miami. A win tonight would seal England's best finish at a World Cup since 1966. Let's cross over live to our football correspondent, Rob Dorset, who is at the Miami Stadium. Rob, good to see you again. There's been reports that Chelsea have agreed what could be a club record fee with Aston Villa for Morgan Rogers. What do you make of that?
Well, extraordinary report to come out, I think you have to say. No one saw that one coming. And look, we haven't been able to speak to Chelsea or to Aston Villa yet to confirm the story. But if it is correct that Chelsea have agreed a £117 million fee with Aston Villa for Morgan Rogers, you have to say that's a heck of a coup for Chelsea, because I think all of the expectation was that he was going to go to Arsenal if he was going to go to anywhere. We know that Aston Villa didn't want to sell him, but I think they were realistic in realising that if clubs were prepared to go to that sort of level, it would be very difficult to keep Morgan Rogers in the Midlands. And the fact is, we thought that of all of his suitors, Arsenal was the most likely. But actually, if you look at the type of player that Morgan Rogers is, a move to Chelsea probably suits him a little bit better, because I think Arsenal would have used him probably wide right rather than as a number 10, which is Morgan Rogers' preferred role. Whereas, Enzo Maresca, who's in charge of Chelsea now, we believe is much more attuned to using two number 10s. Cole Palmer could go alongside Morgan Rogers, of course, and Cole Palmer and Morgan Rogers played together in Manchester City's academy. I don't know whether you just heard that big clap of thunder and flash of lightning here, by the way. Please tell me we're not going to get any delay to this third and fourth place playoff. But let's see exactly how it goes, because things could develop pretty quickly from here. Morgan Rogers will fly back with the England squad from the US, we expect, tomorrow. And so he could take part in a medical pretty quickly after that. And let's see what happens and how it progresses. I think he's quite keen on the move, potentially. But until we've had a chance to confirm it with Chelsea and Aston Villa, we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. At the moment, as things stand, Morgan Rogers is still an Aston Villa player on duty with England out here at the World Cup. OK, if that thunder gets worse and the lightning strikes, Rob, just let us know and we'll cut short our chat. But we'll carry on for the minute. Rogers started against Argentina on Wednesday. Could he start tonight? I think there's a good chance that he may start tonight. I couldn't possibly guess in which position, to be honest, because don't forget, he was brought into this squad, Thomas Tuchel said, as a number 10, as a backup to Jude Bellingham. And at the start of the tournament, remember, there was a big debate about whether it should be Rogers or Bellingham who would start in that number 10 role. Absolutely no debate now. Jude Bellingham has been one of the standout players of this World Cup, not just for England, but for any of the nations that are here. But against Argentina, Rogers started on the right wing. Not his preferred position. So let's see, because I do expect Thomas Tuchel to ring some changes tonight, and in those wide attacking areas I do think there'll be changes. I think he wants to try and bring some fresh legs on, so maybe we'll see a bit more of Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, Noni Madueke, Eberechi Eze and Rogers himself. And so let's see, because I think the attacking options England put out there tonight might be slightly different from what we've seen in the tournament so far. Rob, this match often dubbed as the game that no one wants to play, but just how much does Thomas Tuchel need to win? Look, if England were to win this game, I think it would change the mood considerably. It's incredibly negative, isn't it? The media coverage and the supporter mood since that semi-final exit to Argentina. On the face of it, losing to the reigning world champions, who've won the last 3 international tournaments, if you look at the World Cup and 2 Copa Americas, there's no disgrace in that, but it was the nature of the defeat, with England capitulating and sitting so deep late on and conceding 2 late goals, and Thomas Tuchel going very negative with his substitutions, that I think has left a very sour taste in the mouth. And I haven't seen a level of reaction from the media and England supporters against an England head coach like this, when the team have done OK. They've got to a World Cup semi-final. That's not bad, is it, really? Let's be honest. So I think it matters to the mood going forward from here and the attitude towards Thomas Tuchel, how this game goes, how this result is. If England win this game, as you mentioned right at the start, they will finish 3rd in the World Cup, and that's their best ever finish since 1966, when they won it 60 years ago. So Thomas Tuchel could hold his head high and rightfully claim that, look, I did better than any of my England predecessors, bar Sir Alf Ramsey. It would be hard to argue with him in that case, especially if they'd beaten France, one of the world powerhouses in this bronze medal match. If they lose, I think there'll be more criticism for Thomas Tuchel. If England lose badly, I think there will be a clamour that will create real doubt over Thomas Tuchel's future as England head coach going forward, because that'll be 2 games with 2 defeats, and if one of them is heavy against France, there'll be question marks. He was the guy who was brought in to try and win these big matches against the big nations, to try and put a second star on the shirt. So that's why I think it matters to the England players. I think they want to end on a high if they possibly can, against one of their bitterest of rivals, of course. But for Thomas Tuchel, it feels like the stakes are even higher.
Yeah, Rob, you mentioned France. You describe them as a powerhouse. I mean, is it advantage France tonight, given they've had an extra day's rest? Didier Deschamps' last game, very different dynamic with the managers. He's just feel with the likes of Mbappe, they still have plenty of energy in their ranks. It feels like it's England are flatter somehow than France.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but look, we're not party to what the French media is saying all the time. And look, the French team cruised through this World Cup finals, didn't they? For my money and for a lot of pundits, they were the best team in it, right up until they met a Spain team that absolutely stifled them and dominated them in that World Cup semi-final. And I think there has been some fallout since that game back home in France, that such a storm towards the World Cup final was halted so easily and effectively by Spain. So they will want to go again. Didier Deschamps has suggested that the mood in the camp is a little bit low and nobody's particularly keen on playing this game. But as you mentioned, it is his last game in charge. I think the players will want to go out on a high and try and win it for him. And also bear in mind that Kylian Mbappe is joint top scorer in this tournament alongside Lionel Messi. So there's the small matter of the golden boot that he'll be thinking of. They've got 8 goals, Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham 6. So again, there's something for England's 2 big guns there to maybe keep in their back of the minds in this game. But all of that's a little bit of a sideshow. It's a bronze medal match that Gianni Infantino himself forgot when he was talking to the US President Donald Trump, when he said there's 1 more game to go in this World Cup, and had to correct himself and say, oh, actually there's 2. So if the FIFA president is forgetting about this match, I think 1 or 2 of the England fans can be forgiven for thinking it's maybe not that important. But again, believe me, if you can, that it matters to Thomas Tuchel hugely, because how England end this tournament could be absolutely crucial for his future going forward.
Rob, thank you very much. Great stuff.
Passionate about Tuchel's comments just the other day, so I'm wondering how you're feeling about what he said ahead of this game.
Well, is it better? Did that make it better for you?
Can you cope with these? Because you said you couldn't cope the other day.
Well, the other day it was very, very fresh, like the stuff that he'd been saying. And to be honest, from my perspective, I was advised by somebody to watch the game back to see if it would change my perspective, and it absolutely did not change it at all. It actually made it a lot worse.
You watched it again?
Actually, you said watch after England scored the first goal, and I said, do I have to? And I did. And you can see things like more clearly. I think when we were watching the game for the first time, you caught in the emotion of it all. But I watched it back knowing obviously the result, and I could see things start to happen. And some of the players were starting to drop. The pressing wasn't the same anymore. There were a lot of like very early retreats. So we're going to go and press. It's like, no, let's just come back. Let's come all the way back. And context here is key. I think someone like Jurgen Klopp was trying to say, it's very easy for everybody to talk about how you should have done this, like the Monday quarterback or whatever it's called. And I get that, because I was watching it from the comfort of my own home. I get that. But context is key. Why is Thomas Tuchel in charge of England? He was in charge of England to replace Gareth Southgate, who people believed couldn't take the team to the next stage. That's what they believed. That's what they put all their money into. So to then hear him talking about stuff like he has no control whatsoever over the culture within the country and his team out there on the field who he's had 2 years to prepare, for me personally, I still find it very, very disappointing. And it's not to say that he needs to take accountability and say, I should have done this, I should have done that. But it's almost like he's just writing it off. They had momentum, so this is what it is. And, I tried to help my team by just putting 5 defenders out there. Like, signalling is a big thing in my mind. And so I speak with Cesc Fabregas, the Como manager, and maybe some of this to do with Spanish culture, but he said he will never take off an attacker for a defender because of the message it gives to his team and to the opposition. And that's somebody that's relatively new in terms of management. But when your manager's making that message, like, you know yourself, if this is what it is, this is what it's going to be. And I think England needed something different. The players that he had, I think, were capable of doing better. So if he accepts it, because very quickly, I think it was maybe perception-wise, watching the game back, sorry to go on a little rant here.
No, go ahead.
England retreated with their substitutions before Argentina stepped forward with theirs, because the 3 subs that Argentina made were like for like, more or less. Because you saw, I think Molina came off, you had Lisandro Martinez come off, and then you had Rodrigo de Paul coming on for Simeone. So it's basically like for like. And at that point, England were like, we need to take Gordon off and put a defender on. that to me is the manager making the decision that this is what it's going to be, when he could have said, we need to find more energy to build this press because they're starting to get into a rhythm. And I think the fact that he stepped back, the fact that the players did as well, obviously they're the first part of that, but a manager is willing to accept what he's willing to accept. And I thought he was supposed to be the guy that was different to everybody that's come before. Just my opinion.
Yeah, it's a good thing that you've turned the page, though, Nate. I mean,
Well,
Listen, I've written the same thing on the next page.
He was also very passionate on the Gab and Jules podcast because Jules said that Thomas Tuchel should be sacked.
Yeah, I mean, I maintain it. He's not going to be sacked anyway. We know that. He's going to stay on even if they lose against France today and if they lose against Spain in the next game in September in the Nations League. I just thought what I saw, and I watched the game again, like Nadem, and what I saw again. And I know the players have to take some responsibility. It's not just on Tuchel, but I would give it 90-10 to Tuchel. For me, it was a sackable offense, really. The lack of coaching, and I think even to a certain extent, what we've heard from him since is as bad as what we saw on the pitch in that second half. Because for him to add insult to injury with the comment about English DNA and basically it's your fault, your English football, those English players, if we can't play in a game like that, it's never his fault. I've said that before. Even in the press conference that we just showed you from yesterday, he doesn't actually admit that he got it wrong. He said he doesn't regret anything, and yet what he did was wrong because England lost that game when they were 1-0 up with half an hour to go, when they were 1-0 up with 5 minutes to go, even. So for him to still not read the room properly, not understanding the issue that he's created, especially with England fans, with England players, some of those players currently in his dressing room are not happy with him, didn't understand his decisions, his choices, don't understand his communication, and for him to almost double up on it, I find it really mind-blowing for somebody so smart. So I still think that he should go. He won't go, but I'm not happy with him.
I get you make that point immediately after the game, where emotions are still running high. Maybe things haven't settled. Maybe you haven't joined Nadem in watching the game over again.
Or Jules.
I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest.
I
would not recommend it.
You haven't gotten together and watched the game over. But to still take that position, 2 days, 3 days after the semi-final, that you didn't make anything, that you didn't make any mistakes, it all went to plan or whatever it is. There's only two people I know that stubborn.
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what?
Only two people I know that stubborn. I'm not calling any names, but if you do,
What do we mean, Sally?
if you call any names, I'll whistle. But I cannot believe he is still taking that position. You lost the game. We were discussing yesterday, as players, when you lose a game, you go through all. Which side did I take that goal kick from the right side? Should I move it to the other side? Should I put it on top of the right back instead of the left back? That's how granular you get as a player in looking back on games that you lost. As a manager, to maintain that same position in a game that you lost is absolutely beyond me. Now, also, last week, we sat in the studio, Steve McManaman was here with us, and he said something to the effect of, Tuchel was brought in for England to go all the way. And I asked him, so are you saying then that if they don't win the World Cup, he should go? And his response was, well, let me not say if they don't win it, but if they don't put up a darn good fight in the final, he has to go. Now, we know they're not doing that. So for him to still have this position, it almost as though it shouldn't be a debate within the English FA as to whether he stays on. It really shouldn't. I just don't get so much of this from Thomas Tuchel.
It's amazing to see and hear how he separates himself from the failures of England. Says, we became too passive. I'm sorry. Are you not the man in charge here who's making the decisions and part of the reason as to why this team became too passive and too conservative? If there was only a person that could actually change this and could impact how this team looks on the field, it would have been Thomas Tuchel. And yet he separates himself from that, and it's like, it's Captain Deflecto at his very best. At his very best. And you could see the reaction from John Stones next to him, sitting next to him, when Thomas Tuchel started going down the path of, the gap between us and these other teams is because England just hasn't won anything. And you're John Stones sitting right there and you're saying, now you're just blaming us. You're shifting the blame in this direction and what we are or not as English players and as English people, because he had a go at the DNA as well.
Yes.
How, as a manager of a national team, you're able to somehow protect yourself, shelter yourself, and say that it's everybody else's issue and not you? How does that happen, and how does that not get punished?
Yeah.
I have no idea. The lack of accountability here is just stinky.
OK, pick up on that, Naden, while we show you some pictures of the England players enjoying a barbecue in their downtime.
Yeah, this was intense, wasn't it? It's good to sort of refresh, I imagine, after a big disappointment. So, yeah, it's good that they've had some free time and they're not just going off in their ones. There is sort of a collective there. But I think watching back that game again, no, but it reminded me of a few things, and this is like a bigger
We need
point.
a watch party of the last 30 minutes with Naden and Jules.
It's almost like this might sound like a real. No, I was going to say like this is like related to like watching a disaster. That game's going on. All of a sudden, a couple of people stop pressing. Yeah, Jordan Pickford starts taking lots of longer balls, hoping that Harry Kane can win a flick on. So that's one thing. That's another thing. The players are starting to look tired. You're looking at this disaster building and building and building, and we can see that. The manager, who is being paid to see everything about that,